This is it, guys. This, I feel, will change the IRL streaming space as we know it. Until now, high quality outdoor live streaming has been locked behind a huge paywall. If we just look at the total cost of an IRL backpack, then on top of that, all the monthly upkeep costs for their services and even multiple 4G connections, yeah, good luck streaming without having a few thousand viewers just to cover the ongoing costs. But it's all about to change. If you want to stream from an event or take your audience on a bike trip while maintaining superb 1080p quality with great stabilization, stay tuned and watch how to build your own lightweight outdoor streaming rig that fits even in your smallest backpack. Let's go! Not only did we manage to match almost all the functionalities of the expensive IRL backpacks, but even heavily beat it in some categories. For example, image quality. We're talking crisp 1080p up to 60 FPS using about 30% less bandwidth. Oh, and the one thing that IRL backpack guys never mention is how heavy and bulky those setups are. Another great thing about our solution is that the software that we're using is 100% free, open source, and available on GitHub. Before we begin, I'd just like to give a shout out to all the EEE community members that made this possible, and most credit goes to Loopy, who led the charge on almost all the streaming software advancements we made in last year. If you'd like to join us and stay up to date with all the new updates, I've left the Discord link in the description. Alright, let's start. You have two main stream flow options when streaming outdoors. The first one is streaming straight from your device to Twitch or YouTube, whether it's a smartphone or a GoPro. That is what the streaming apps offer when you see stream to YouTube and similar. There's a lot of downsides to this, the biggest being when you lose connection, your stream completely shuts off. That's why all the IRL backpacks use paid services to keep your stream live while you're trying to reconnect. Second problem is that you most likely won't have any overlays on your stream, meaning no stream donations, live GPS, etc., except if you're using Streamlabs on your phone. The second option is streaming to a middleman server. In our example, the home PC that you used to stream your usual content with. Your stream PC then takes your camera feed, applies whatever live overlays, custom EQs, and filters you want, and then sends it to Twitch or YouTube. The paid services do basically the same thing, but you have to pay ridiculous monthly fees to use those. Not only that, but you can't fully customize them, and they're often limited when it comes to quality options. The most important feature of using a middleman service is that your stream stays live even if your 4G connection dies. Your scene is automatically switched to some video clips, for example, while the audience is waiting. This is huge. The viewer drop-off is almost non-existent even though you're not live at the moment. For these reasons, we'll be building our setup using the second option, making our PC at home effectively a relay server. Not all is perfect. As with every budget solution, there are always trade-offs. The only major one here is using a single 4G connection, but we partially compensate by using a superior contemporary protocol. More on that a little bit later. Now, how do we do all of this? Let's start with the hardware. The camera. This is the only category you cannot save money on compared to the IRL backpacks, and that is because you're going to use the same devices. Now, of course, you could just stream with your phone. It's not the worst idea, and a lot, if not most people do that, but in the long run, this is not feasible. You can't do any action shots, it's hard to mount them, the stabilization isn't as good, and there's certainly a lack of wide and super wide perspectives. Not to mention that your iPhone alone costs at least $1,000, so we can't even treat it as a budget option. We want an action camera with great image stabilization. There's nothing worse than unstabilized footage, it just makes you sick while watching it. The camera also has to have 3 jacks, an HDMI out, a USB power jack, and a 3.5mm microphone jack. Believe it or not, this is a lot to ask from a compact action camera. Hence, the options are very limited. For the most part, it's just GoPro and Sony. I won't get into specifics on which device to choose in this video. We'll do that in another one. For now, let's say we'll spend $400 on the camera. For mounting the camera, you can use whatever you want. An easy solution for a bike stream would be a cheap chesty mount. They'll set you back about $10. Next, we jump to the star of the show, the encoder. This is the TBS2603 SE, a super tiny beast of an encoder that takes the HDMI video and audio and encodes it with H.265, also known as HEVC. It goes about $230, which is funny for how much value this provides. It uses up to 30% less bandwidth, meaning you can get the best looking stream footage possible without overflowing your bandwidth. The LiveU Solo, for example, can only do H.264, which means it produces lower quality than the TBS actually. The problem with using H.265 is that you cannot stream that directly to Twitch nor YouTube, as they don't fully support the new codec yet. But that's where the middleman StreamPC comes into play, and I'll show you how we managed to deal with that in a bit. But how do you power this encoder? It doesn't have a battery, it only has a 5.5mm jack. Well, this is something that I've been experimenting with for a while, and I've found a very cool universal solution. You see, a lot of devices like this work with 12-volt power. Your USB power banks typically output 5 volts. Now, in order to keep the form factor small and stay within a certain budget, it'd be convenient if you could use the normal phone power banks you have lying around. Well, you can. You just need the proper cable. This is a step-up cable, a 5-volt to 12-volt to be specific. Now, these cheap Chinese cables cannot handle much current, meaning they're only good for about 800 milliamps. Luckily, the max power of the encoder is only 6 watts, so we're within the cable's limits. However, you have to make sure that your power bank can output at least 2 amps at all times, otherwise it may not be strong enough. But again, most power banks nowadays can handle that. This is such a great hack that saves you a lot of money, space, and weight in the backpack. Because the alternative that almost all IRL backpacks have to use is this, a $135 12-volt monstrosity of a power bank. It's not only gigantic, but you can't even take it on a plane because it's treated as a bomb due to its capacity. Since the encoder needs an Ethernet connection, you'll need a 4G mobile router that has an Ethernet port. You can really use whatever model you want. I've happened to have my old TP-Link MR6400 sitting around, which is not even a mobile router. It's a home 4G router that doesn't have an internal battery. Luckily, we can just use the same trick as we did with the encoder. This type of router will set you back only about 80 bucks, but if you want the proper thing, check out the Netgear Nighthawk M1. The link's up here. Okay, so let's hook everything up. In order for the GoPro to stream for 5 hours straight, we need to give it an external power source. Another small power bank will do just fine, as the GoPro doesn't require much power. Next up, we need to use a micro HDMI to HDMI cable. The cable goes from the GoPro to the encoder. The encoder then uses its Ethernet connection with the router to transmit the data to the PC at home. In case one of your devices doesn't power up, try reconnecting the USB step-up cable, since the power banks tend to fall asleep after not being used for a while. That is it. That's all the hardware. Now the software. The big news here is that we will not be using RTMP, your everyday streaming protocol. It's just not stable enough for a hectic 4G connection. We've been trying and trying for months to make it as smooth as possible, but in the end, we had to give in to something that is more fit for the task. I present to you the Secure Reliable Transfer Protocol, or SRT. Man, they really nailed it with the name. I won't go into the specifics right now, as I'll make a dedicated video to cover the whole setup and settings, but in short, the protocol is made specifically for streaming in variable conditions, ensuring the best quality and stability possible. It does come with a few downsides. It's not trivial to set up if you're not tech savvy, and you cannot use it to stream directly to Twitch or YouTube. It's new and still being developed, unlike RTMP that has been abandoned for years. Again, I probably wouldn't figure this out if it wasn't for my community members, and if you guys need help setting this up, feel free to come by our Discord server and ask anything in the channels there. Looking forward to seeing your setups. Back to the topic. Here comes OBS to the rescue. You can receive and play SRT streams perfectly fine, even the H.265 encoded streams. Now we want to add the overlays, apply filters, and send this to Twitch or YouTube. But before we do, we need an automatic scene switcher. Here's where we're using our own homemade solution, Loopy's SRT stats monitor, and we made it open source and available to everyone. The solution deserves a dedicated video, but in short, it automatically monitors the status of the inbound stream, actually 2 of them if you have another camera, and switches scenes accordingly. If there's no reception from any of them, it switches to an intermission scene where you can have a video playing to keep the audience entertained while you're busy desperately trying to find the 4G. Remember those services that you had to pay $200 for? Yeah, you get that for free now. If you want to control the scenes manually, you can set up a WebSocket server within OBS and access your scenes through your phone's browser. It works extremely well and is very handy. One last thing you might have to do is port forwarding both for the WebSocket server and the SRT ingests. You're going to need about 3 to 4 ports total. There's plenty of guides for that online, but also covered in some other video. There we go. That is how you make your own customizable IRL streaming setup that will not slaughter your bank account. And you can use anything you already own and build around it. Full list of the gear used will be in the description if you're curious what exact devices and cables I'm using. I'll definitely be posting more on this topic, in-depth videos on each little category. So please hit the subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think of all of this. Maybe this is your year for a breakout in the IRL streaming scene. Summer's coming, so hurry up, get that setup running. You can also catch me live on Twitch, links in the description below. That's it. I'll see you in the next one.